Hey folks, I know I'm just an old guy talking about some mysteries, but please leave a like and subscribe before we start. Let's enjoy today's video. The RMS Titanic, a name that echoes through history, not just as a marvel of engineering, but as a symbol of human hubris, tragedy, and mystery. When the Titanic set sail on its maiden voyage from Southampton to New York City on April 10, 1912, it was hailed as the largest and most luxurious ship ever built. It was deemed unsinkable. But just 4 days later, on the cold night of April 14, 1912, the Titanic struck an iceberg and sank, taking over 1,500 lives with it. What followed was not just a tragedy, but a mystery that has captivated the world for over a century. Let's start with the iceberg. How could a ship, touted as unsinkable, be brought down by a chunk of ice? The iceberg itself was no ordinary one. Reports suggest it was a massive, dark iceberg, likely flipped over, revealing its submerged, jagged edges. These edges tore into the Titanic's hull, creating a series of small but fatal gashes. But here's the mystery. Why didn't the crew see it sooner? Some say it was a moonless night, making it harder to spot the iceberg. Others blame the lack of binoculars in the crow's nest. But could there have been more to it? Some theories suggest that atmospheric conditions caused a mirage, distorting the horizon and hiding the iceberg until it was too late. Then there's the question of the ship's speed. Why was the Titanic traveling at nearly full speed in an area known for icebergs? Some believe the White Star Line, the company that owned the Titanic, was pushing for a record-breaking crossing to generate headlines. Others suggest that a coal fire in one of the ship's bunkers, which had been burning since before it left port, forced the crew to maintain high speeds to reach New York quickly. Could this fire have weakened the ship's structure, making it more vulnerable to the iceberg's impact? It's a theory that's gained traction in recent years, but we may never know for sure. Now let's talk about the lifeboats. The Titanic carried only 20 lifeboats, enough for about half of its passengers and crew. At the time, this was actually more than required by maritime regulations, but it was still woefully inadequate. Why weren't there more? Some say it was to keep the decks clear and maintain the ship's aesthetic appeal. Others believe it was a cost-cutting measure. But here's the real mystery. Why were so many lifeboats launched half-empty? Some lifeboats left with only a handful of people, while hundreds remained on the sinking ship. Was it panic? Poor training? Or something else entirely? And what about the passengers? The Titanic was a microcosm of society, with everyone from millionaires to immigrants on board. But the survival rates tell a troubling story. First-class passengers had a much higher chance of survival than those in second or third class. Was this simply a matter of proximity to the lifeboats, or was there a more sinister element at play? Some accounts suggest that third-class passengers were deliberately prevented from reaching the lifeboats, while others argue that language barriers and confusion were to blame. The truth remains elusive. Then there's the mystery of the ship's final moments. As the Titanic sank, it broke in two, a fact that was only confirmed when the wreck was discovered in 1985. But why did it break? Some say it was due to the ship's design flaws, while others believe it was the result of the immense pressure as the bow plunged into the depths. And what about the sounds reported by survivors? Many described loud explosions or booms as the ship went down. Were these the sounds of the ship breaking apart, or something else? The sinking of the Titanic also gave rise to countless stories of heroism and cowardice. There's the band that played on as the ship sank, the wealthy couple who chose to stay together rather than separate, and the captain who went down with his ship. But there are also tales of selfishness and betrayal, of men disguising themselves as women to get a spot on a lifeboat, and of lifeboats rowing away from the sinking ship, afraid of being swamped by desperate swimmers. These stories add layers of complexity to the tragedy, but they also raise questions about human nature in the face of disaster. And then there are the conspiracy theories. Some believe the Titanic was sunk on purpose as part of an insurance scam. The theory goes that the ship was actually the Titanic's sister ship, the Olympic, which had been damaged in a previous accident. By sinking it and claiming it was the Titanic, the White Star Line could collect a massive insurance payout. But is there any truth to this? Most historians dismiss it as a far-fetched idea, but it's a theory that persists. Another mystery surrounds the Titanic's distress signals. The ship fired distress rockets and sent out wireless messages, but the nearest ship, the Californian, failed to respond. Why? The Californian's crew claimed they didn't recognize the rockets as distress signals, but others believe they simply ignored them. Could more lives have been saved if the Californian had acted? It's a question that haunts the Titanic's legacy. Even the discovery of the wreck has its mysteries. When Robert Ballard and his team found the Titanic in 1985, they were actually on a secret mission to investigate two sunken nuclear submarines. The Titanic was a cover story. But what secrets does the wreck hold? Over the years, expeditions have recovered artifacts and taken photographs, but the ship itself is slowly being consumed by rust-eating bacteria. What will we lose when the Titanic is gone forever? And what about the stories of the supernatural? Some claim that the Titanic is haunted, that the spirits of those who died still linger around the wreck. There are reports of ghostly apparitions, strange sounds, and eerie feelings experienced by those who have visited the site. Is there any truth to these tales, or are they just the product of overactive imaginations? The Titanic's legacy is one of both tragedy and mystery. It's a story that reminds us of the fragility of human life and the hubris of thinking we can conquer nature. But it's also a story that continues to captivate us, that keeps us asking questions and searching for answers. What really happened that night? Could it have been prevented? And what lessons can we learn from it? As we close this chapter on the Titanic, let's remember those who lost their lives and the stories they left behind. The Titanic may be gone, but its mysteries live on, reminding us that there's always more to discover, more to understand. Until next time, keep exploring the unknown and come back for another mystery of humanity.